I was 12 years old and I loved to ride horses. And on this particular day, the cinch wasn't completely tight enough. And horses like to expand their belly when you're putting the saddle on. So this horse had expanded its belly and the cinch was loose. And during the lesson, I felt the saddle slipped and I fell off the horse, and the horse reared up and kicked me in the right temple out of fear. And from there, I was taken to a local hospital. I was out of consciousness, and then I was taken care flighted or care sent to Waco. And that's where my story kind of began. I was comatose in the hospital. They said I was very deeply within the coma, and they invited my parents to play movies at my bedside, anything they could do to stimulate the mind. And so my father chose a Disney movie that was predominantly classical music. And that's kind of where the story begins. I found myself on a raft of sorts. It was this pink clouds all around me and this wooden raft. And in front of me was Jesus, who I knew. I recognized Jesus. And to my left was a man in long brown robes. He was thinner. He had a bald head. He had no shoes on his feet. And I didn't know who he was, but I felt completely safe and connected in this space. I felt held, I felt protected. And there was no communication at that first kind of landing on the other side. But from there, I was lifted out of that experience into first this bright white realm that I don't talk much about because it was such a small part of my experience, but it had different colored streams and trees, and there was this pervasive love and music. There was this music that I never heard and never have again, that was otherworldly, other instruments, beautiful, all pervasive. Like this place was music. And then the thing I remember most is the experience of the golden light. And I call it the golden light because this place really didn't even have a name. It was an experience, a feeling of wholeness, a feeling of love, of completeness. There was an energy to it that was almost weighted. And the best I can describe it is it was a weighted blanket. It was this fullness that wrapped around my soul body. I didn't have a body there. I didn't have a mind. There was nothing but love, right? That's all it was. There was nothing but love. It was this experience of being whole. And I remember the fullness of that light wrapping around me, and then I just expanded. I became the light. That light wrapped around me, and I became that fullness. And that was the experience I believe I was meant to have. I left that place sometime after. I could have been there lifetimes, right? But I left and went back into this transitional place, I guess, on the raft, this wooden raft. And that time, Jesus communicated with me through his thoughts. And I was given a choice. I could either stay or I could come back. And I wanted to stay, honestly. I felt so whole, and like that was the reality of, that was real. And this human life was like imagined. That's how it felt. I wanted to stay, but I was so shown the trajectory of my father's life, and that he wouldn't actualize his life on this planet if I were to choose to stay. And even though there was no right or wrong, and that's something I want to tell people, there was no right or wrong. I could have chosen to stay and it would have been okay, and it would have worked out, and everything was good and beautiful. Everything was for the greater good. But I chose to come back. I chose to heal people with music. And that's when I was given human feeling. That's when I was giving knowledge. I was downloaded with all of this information about why we're here, why now, what is important and isn't important, that what we focus on this planet actually is a distraction from reality. A lot of the things we think about are actually taking us away and distracting us from our presence. But in that moment, I remember I was so grateful to live. And I was given all of this information that I made a vow that I would make my life count. This is kind of what I think about it now, but the vow was very simple. I want to go back and I will heal people with music. I will use music to help people. That was my vow. And I also made one other vow, and it was to give gratitude for every life experience, no matter what, because I knew it was all, we were guided, we were protected. It was all meant to happen. It was all from love. And right after I made those two simple vows, I went into this darkness, but it was this welcoming darkness. It was like womb-like, maybe. And I saw this musical staff in the distance in the dark, and each note was a different color. And we've heard about this kind of ability to see color through music, and some people have this skill. Well, in that moment, I could see it, but I couldn't hear anything. And the music was animated. It was, the notes were moving on the staff, and it got bigger and bigger as it got closer and just went right through me. And it was at that moment that I heard something, and it was almost inaudible. I could barely hear it. It would be something where you would think, am I crazy? What do I hear? But my soul attached to that sound, and that sound became everything in the cosmos, in the universe, everything. And it was music. And as I focused on that sound, I realized now I was pulling myself back into my body through music. And I allowed the sound to become more clear and more distinct and louder until finally it was so loud in my head that the only thing I could do was open my eyes to escape it. And it was not easy to just force my eyes open, but I did it. And then I was in the ICU, and the nurse came running over, and I caught a glimpse of the rolling cart. Back in the 80s, they rolled the cart over, and there was a movie playing bedside, a classical music movie with 90% classical music, and it was Tchaikovsky, and it woke me up from the coma. And from that moment on, I did not know how, I didn't know where, but I knew I had come back to heal people with music. And I found that later in my life through many mystical experiences and guidance from Source that led me to a school called Naropa University, which was founded by by Trungpa Rinpoche, and very connected with the Dalai Lama and very immersed in Buddhist philosophy. So at this school, I had my why from my near-death experience, but I went to the school for transpersonal counseling psychology, which is spiritual psychology. I have a master's in that and a master's in music therapy. I was walking up to meditation class the first week or so of school, and I saw a depiction of a Buddha that was younger and bald and thin and had long brown robes. And I knew without a doubt, and I had had a feeling before that, but I knew without a doubt in that moment that Buddha was the figure, the other master that was there to guide me and meet me on the other side. And it was through that training that I learned about a process using music and imagery that allows people to connect to their higher self, that takes them out of the thinking mind, that connects them on a transpersonal level to the other side. And the first time I experienced that, I thought, this is the closest I will ever come to my NDE in my living life. And when you've had an NDE and you've experienced that love, you want to find it again. And that reintegration into human is not always easy. And so when I experienced that, I knew that I wanted to bring it to other people. I wanted them to experience it for themselves. And that's what I do. Naropa gave me my how. And I've developed that process through downloads that I continue to receive about my work and frequency and sound, and even the water element within our body and how it transports light. All of these things, they just come together over and over again. And I've developed a beautiful process using that. And I love it. And that's my story. It's the most powerful, vivid experience I have had in my life. And it's kind of funny because I wasn't really alive at that moment. I was alive, but I was out of my human body and experience. And I lost all my memory before that accident. When I came back, I didn't know things. I didn't know who people were. I had to relearn a little bit how to walk and talk, and that I learned very quickly that I did not know consciously what the heck people were talking about. I mean, I was a head-injured 12-year-old who had no clue about the world at all. I came back like everything was new, everything was exciting, everything was intimidating, everything was big, and I had to learn quickly to connect with people through their soul. And so it was a gift to me, because when I came back, I didn't understand half of what the world was talking about, but I understood energy, And so I developed that skill, and I learned to connect with people outside of the story, because we get lost in the story so often. The story becomes our reality. We believe our story. And that's part of what I was shown on the other side, is that we create our reality through our thoughts. And if we constantly are believing what our human is saying, we're missing the bigger picture. And so that was my first training. And I talk about in my book how I developed that intuitive skill of bringing messages through without necessarily knowing that they were messages, or and even like trying to kind of hide that they were messages for people, because my teenage friends didn't understand the language I was speaking with, or the perspective, but they still loved it. I just had to be very careful with how I presented it at the time. I found through the years that there's a beautiful, vulnerable, authentic moment that you can share with people when they realize for themselves what is on the other side. And you don't have to tell them about it, because you can provide the experience that shows it to them directly. And to me, that's a bigger gift than coming back with an ability to, like, quote, heal people with music, as I vowed to come back and do. To allow people to connect with their God energy, their highest self, the highest, greatest good, with the light. I mean, what could be better? That's a dream. That is a life. How do I get to live this life? I'm so thankful. I'm thankful to be here. I'm thankful that I came back. I'm thankful that I got the choice and to do the work that I do. And for anyone out there who's listening, please know that you are always connected to light. It is always available to you. There is so much for us on the other side. It's almost as if this is the illusion and the other side is reality. You are held, you are loved, you are important, you have purpose. This life, it might be challenging at times, and there are things that we go through, but you are always held. And there's a higher being that's always with you. And I just want to acknowledge and bring that forward for anyone listening today.